case you didn't know that we could walk and chew bubble gum at the same time. All right. Okay. So what we're about here is the WWDC keynote, and we've got 3 segments to it: hardware, software, and etc. But let me bebop along here. Let's see if I can. So for the overall agenda, I'm going to talk a little bit about the overview of the whole kit and caboodle. Can you get my show notes up here or not? My speaker notes, my presenter notes? But anyway, we're going to do an overview of the WWDC, and then we'll do a little bit on the hardware that I'm going to do as well. And then Robert is going to talk to you about what's going to be new in, or what is new already in terms of the beta, because he's been running the beta of macOS Ventura. And Dan is going to tell us about iOS 16, and then we'll do a little bit of, talking, etc. So Tim opened the whole WWDC thing, and obviously you guys may or may not have watched part of it. I will say that the graphics on it, there were lots of cool graphics and permutations, et cetera, but also he talked a lot about what Apple is doing for the developer community, specifically helping underrepresented populations, and opening some developer centers, and also opening a large developer center in Cupertino, but also around the country, and I think around the world. He mentioned specifically that there was one in Saudi Arabia for women coders. Then I'll talk a little bit about the M2 chip. I'm going to go on to that in a second. The MacBook Air has a new design. The MacBook Pro has essentially just an updated CPU, but it does have the M2 CPU, and so on and so forth. So let me get right into this. The M2 chip itself has better performance and uses less power than the PC chip. So I would say even more. Everything you know about the M1 chips, the M2 chip is even more. It does have better performance than the M1 chip. So that's a piece of it. The chip sequence, I was having a little bit of a hard time figuring out in my head what's more powerful than what. So I put this together as a chip sequence so it'll make sense for you guys. There is the just plain vanilla, I call it plain vanilla M1 chip, and now there's the plain vanilla, if you will, M2 chip. But the M1 Pro is faster, more better than the M2 or the M1, okay? And the M1 Max equals, in a sense, 2 M1 Pros put together. And the M1 Ultra equals 2 M1 Maxes put together. It would be better if I had a space there. If I can edit that, I will. Can I edit that? There. So if you're looking to buy one of these new Macs and you want to go, well, what chip do I need? What makes more sense for me? Most of us, unless you're doing high-end video editing, maybe some very, very elaborate photo editing, et cetera, most of us, any of these chips would work just fine. But you want to do some more digging. Bear in mind, though, that the M1 Pro, the M1 Max, and M1 Ultra are still better, faster, more powerful, et cetera, than the M1, or pardon me, the M2, if that makes any sense. Whoops, uh-oh, don't do that. Okay, there we go. Okay, so there's your chip sequence. Thank you, Dan. The MacBook Air, new hardware that was introduced, has new design and new colors. It is 13.6 inches, which I think is like a smidge bigger than the previous MacBook Air. The new design, it's no longer, remember the MacBook Airs had that kind of wedgy feel to them? It's no longer that wedgy feel. Instead, it's more, it's like square all the way through, same depth all the way through. The colors, they now have silver, space gray, but also midnight, which is a very, very, very dark blue. And some folks are saying it's reminiscent of the old, remember the old black Apple laptops from long time ago? Some people are saying it's reminiscent of that. And then there's Starlight, which is, I'm told, is a soft golden color. So fancy dancy colors. 2.7 pounds. The base specs are 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabyte SSD for storage, and then 8-core CPU and 8-core GPU that's in the M2 chip, right? Because it's a system on a chip. It's all integrated. The max specs, if you want to soup it up, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD, an optional 67 watt USB-C fast charge. So there's your specs on the M2, pardon me, on the MacBook Air. And then the MacBook Pro 13 has, has the same design as the previous MacBook Pro. It is silver and space gray are the colors. It retains the touch bar. It's actually the same machine as the previous MacBook Pro, but it's a 13-inch. The CPU is upgradable, the CPU upgrade is an M2 chip. And the basic specs are 8 gigabytes of RAM, 256 gigabytes of SSD storage, 8-core CPU, 10-core GPU, and it comes with the 67-watt USB-C fast charge. And the max specs, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD. And you can tweak it for however you want it. Okay, that's actually all I'm going to do. I'm going to move it over for Robert to start on Ventura. Let him tell you about what's going on there.
Okay, everyone. And I assume you can still hear me. Is everyone good? Okay, good. Okay, so macOS Ventura. This is a major redesign of the operating system, mainly to add a little more convenience, put various settings and easy to understand organization. The public beta is now available. And in fact, what you're looking at on my laptop here is the public beta. Okay. And I'm going to talk about the general appearance, settings, mail, Safari, and so forth. Okay. First off, Spotlight. Spotlight now has the ability to do an image search. So you can say that you want to find an image that contains particular elements, and it will use the Google facility to locate that on the web, and it will also make a fair job of trying to find it in your own pictures on the Mac. You can also do more quick actions now. For example, Shazam and starting a timer, and various shortcuts. If you've selected a document in Spotlight and you hit the space bar, it will open the quick look for that document, which can be fairly convenient. Okay, Safari. Safari will now sync its settings for individual websites across your devices. It's had syncing settings before for the overall Safari, but now when you set up an individual website and you say, well, this one I'm allowing notifications or whatever, cookie adjustments and so forth, all of that will be synced as well. And it will sync your extensions. Notifications are all opt-in. So you just don't automatically get notifications from a web page you visit. You have to let them throw up a dialogue and ask you to opt in for that to happen. And then we have live text in Safari for text shown in images. This means it will recognize text, convert it, and you would be able to select it, copy it, or whatever. Also use your speak text function on it. Okay. Oh, and if you have any questions, please jump in and let me know. Okay. In fact, I see that some people in chat are throwing this up. Okay. Passkeys. Well, this is a across the industry effort with Google, Apple, I believe Microsoft involved, where you will use an authoritative identity provider to sign into anything. Now, in the past, we've had authoritative identity providers that could do things such as signing you into a website, but this is going to be a bit more extensive. This will be able to handle app sign-ins and any place that you ordinarily would have used a password. Also, unlike the previous federated login, this is going to use a significantly improved passcode storage and protection. iPhoto shared library. Now, this is interesting. In the past, you could share an album. However, you can now set up a library that you will share between up to five family members. And when so shared, they basically have all the privileges. They can make albums, they can add photos, they can delete photos, they can, do whatever you would do directly. So it's a way to let everyone join in on maintaining a iPhoto library. And I notice I put iPhone library there, but I do mean the iPhoto library. Of course, it depends upon how much you trust your family members. Stage Manager. Okay, Stage Manager is a new way to organize the open windows. And I think you may have already seen this demonstrated in the online. If I stop sharing for a moment, I can show it to you on this screen. So I'm going to attempt that. Oh, there it is, sure. Okay, now, okay, this is Stage Manager. So if you look over here on the side, this is the currently active documents. And I can simply choose one to bring it back. Okay, now I'm going to go back to sharing my keynote. Okay, should be seeing the keynote again now.
Yes.
Okay, now you'll notice that the individual windows are centered on the screen when they're active. And I can set up multiple windows. I do that by doing an option drag of the window I want to add to the screen onto the middle of the screen, and then you'll have both windows available. FaceTime. Okay, there will be live transcripts with attribution of the speaker during group sessions. So if I set up a group FaceTime, I can get a transcript made as we go along. And it will actually label the transcript with the person that was speaking. If I'm collaborating on a document, for example, earlier, Dan and Linda and I were all collaborating on this keynote presentation. If I feel there's a need for a FaceTime discussion in real time of the document, I can start that and bring them up and discuss what we're doing. So that would be convenient. Freeform. Well, Freeform is something that's coming soon, so I haven't had a chance to try it out. It's a canvas for laying out project ideas. So it's kind of like a brainstorming system. We've seen similar things in the past, but presumably you can diagram your ideas, and you can do this again with document sharing so that a group of people can basically work on a project and flesh out some ideas. System settings. Well, I already was in system settings earlier. You may have noticed that the rows of icons are gone. And now it is basically a left side menu that opens up a pane for various settings. Now they've also altered where different settings live in those panes. However, that's not a big problem because you may have noticed that I typed in the setting I wanted into the search tool, and then it would take me to that setting. Okay, security. Now, security updates in the past meant they restarted your system. You had a system update, and you would download it, and then you would restart to have them in effect. They will now be deploying many security updates independently of the general software updates. Now, this will hopefully be much more efficient, certainly faster, and there will not be a restart. So that'll be nice. And also, I believe that you can set that up to be automatic in the background, so you'll never miss a security update. Dictation. Dictation will now support automatic punctuation. I don't know exactly how that's going to work. I haven't tried it, but I assume that means that if I'm going along and I make a sentence and I pause long enough, it will throw in a period or a question mark or whatever, depending upon the grammar that I've been using. You can also use voice to specify emoji, which may or may not be a dangerous feature. We'll just have to see how that works out. Home app. There'll be a home app that will handle your lights, cameras, security, your TV, your climate controls, all from your Macintosh. That would be something like what is available on the iPhone, but now on your Mac. Hide My Email. Hide My Email will now be available for third-party apps. So if you're using some alternative email system, you will have that available there as well. If they support it, of course. They have to write the code themselves, but they now have access to it. Okay, as you will learn, there will be multi-stop routing and maps, both on iOS, but also on the Mac. I have tried that. It's an interesting little feature, and presumably make trip planning a bit nicer. There's going to be more languages and emoji, and that includes a lot of regional China support. China has a number of different languages, and they have now been added to our language support. Live text should be available everywhere. And what that means is that if you throw up what is normally an image or whatever, it will recognize the fact that there's text in there and may give you the ability to select it or speak it or whatever. There will be a photos duplicate detection so that you can clean up your iPhoto library. And we're also getting the weather app now on the Macintosh, which a lot of people have wanted. Okay. So I believe that is the main features I wanted to mention on Ventura. Okay, I'm going to hand this over then to Dan, who's going to talk about iOS 16.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Yeah, iOS 16, we have a lot of new things coming in that it's really pretty nice. So first of all, before we talk about specifically the features, iOS is making a little bit of a break, and that's the models that supported, some of the older models that supported iOS 15, the current iOS, are not going to make the jump to iOS 16. So iOS 16 works with iPhones 8 and up. So what will not be, you won't be able to get iOS 16 if you have a 6S, a 7, or the iPod Touch. And that includes the Macs, the pluses and all that stuff. So there's a little bit of a transition here. Be aware of that. It's one of the more interesting things that they're doing. It's very hard to demonstrate, but it's a new lock screen. So right now, when you have a lock screen on your phone, that you can set the picture, and there's really, you can see your notifications cover your picture, and that's about it. But what they've done with the lock screens on iOS 16 is they've taken a lot of cues from the way the Apple Watch works. That is, when you're on your Apple Watch, if you have one, you can just push and hold, and you can start scrolling between different watch faces and get all kinds of watch faces. And you can even change them through automation depending on circumstances. Now, iOS 16 will be able to do a lot of the same things. So you'll be able to have multiple lock screens that you can switch between or have automatically changed based on environmental context or time of day or whatever automation you care to set up. Or you can just have the thing rotate through different lock screens, like a picture frame every so often that you can set up if you have a photo album for the background picture. But in addition to changing the background pictures, you now have below the time the possibility of putting in a row of widgets. So widgets are something where you can visually just look at it, glance and see, say what the temperature in your town is, or what your next calendar event is, or maybe a big icon that represents your battery status, that kind of thing. Third-party apps will be able to add their own widgets, and you can customize widgets per lock screen. So based on, for all kinds of things, you can have different lock screens that have different glanceable information. So very similar in a lot of ways to the Apple Watch. And that'll be a really fun and interesting an actually useful thing that I think to have. And then messaging will have some new features. So there's always the embarrassing things where you sent out something where Siri misspells it and changes the meaning entirely, or you misspell it and you send something you didn't mean to, or anyway, you can now decide you didn't want to send that message. You have up to 15 minutes to either delete that message, say, I don't want that message sent, and it will remove it, or you can edit it and it'll send back the edited version. You can do this 15 minutes, up to 15 minutes since you sent that message. So now it does mark that the message was deleted or a message was edited, so that, there's, eliminates more of the harassment possibilities, I think. But that's just nice for just inadvertent mistakes or Siri making a goofy message. Then you can also recover messages that were recently deleted. So if someone inadvertently deletes a message, you can actually go back up to a month and see what that deleted message was. You can also, like email, even though you've read a conversation, you can mark it as unread in case some people do this for emails to make sure that they get that as a kind of a follow-up indicator. So some more similarities to email there. These will be nice. Now, health app, which if you're not using right now you do have a health app on your iPhone with the current OS, but they do, and I use this, and with the new health app version on iOS 16, there's a new feature that has a bunch of features related to medications where this is all new. So you can make a medications list, everything you're taking. You can put the schedule that you're taking it on. You can track whether you've taken it or not. And some really interesting and helpful stuff here. And that is since the phone knows all the medications that you're taking, and it will tell you if there's an interaction between medicines that is a problem. And this is something where this gets messed up, as you probably know, all the time in the medical industry, where the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing as far as care goes, but at least you have a backup here that says, oh, taking this with that is a serious problem, and it will let you know. So, and then also you have the ability to actually share your health data with other people. So if you have a family member who wants to see, what's been going on, you can actually share this data out with them on an individual basis. And you can also create a PDF of your health data, which includes all the health data that comes from third-party providers that you have connected, which might be your lab reports or something. So it becomes quite useful as a way to really help you manage and help other people be able to look at your health data. So this is really quite a nice step forward. All right, the fitness app. Well, the fitness app is on the iPhone even if you don't have an Apple Watch, and that's different than right now, which is if you have an Apple Watch, you have a fitness app. If you don't have a fitness app. So the fitness app, the benefit of having the fitness app on your phone when you don't have a watch, Apple Watch, is that your phone can detect when you're walking around, and it can count the steps. It can estimate the distance. It can estimate flights climbed. And also, if you do a third-party workout, if you have I don't know, some people have Pelotons or other exercise equipments that are Bluetooth enabled. And I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. And that can collect it. And you can have it also centrally in your fitness app where you don't have to have purchased an Apple Watch to get that integration. So these are nice changes. Apple Maps has some good improvements. I've been using Apple Maps a lot just to get more of the privacy element away from Google Maps, and they've improved from a long ways from when they introduced it. But this really, what they're doing, the major feature is multi-stop routing. So this is really nice. I think you can actually now, instead of just having a destination, currently all you can do in terms of multi-stops is you can say, I want to go to this address. And then if in route, you can say, oh, I want to stop at a coffee shop or a gas station or something like that. And it lets you add something nearby. But it's pretty limited and is kind of pre-selected choices. But this actually lets you plan this stuff out ahead of time. And it doesn't have to be in Apple's list of categories to insert. And what's also nice is you can do all the planning of your trip on the Mac, and it will just automatically sync to the phone. So it makes you be able to use the Mac for the planning where it's much easier. And then you can just get in the car and use Apple Maps and you'll have it all there. Siri discoverability. This is great. In my case, I used Siri when it first came out, and sometimes it worked and most of the time it didn't. And what you could do with it was very, very limited. It was very, very hard to use. And so after a few times, I just kind of gave up with Siri and never really paid much attention to it. But now, but it's involved a lot. And what they want to be able to do is help you figure out what Siri can do in any one situation. So that means when you're looking at a page in iOS, you can just say, hey, Siri, what can I do here? And Siri will tell you the kind of commands you can give and what you can do. It also works if you're in a particular app that you use. You can say, hey, Siri, what can I do here? And it will instruct you the different things you can possibly do. So this becomes a way to maybe rediscover Siri if you're like me and you gave up on it years ago. So I'm looking forward to seeing if I can actually get some real value out of Siri. So there are a lot of other features that have come along. Many of them are in parallel with the changes that Robert talked about in Ventura. So most of the features in Ventura are also that are in things like notes and mail and things like that are also going along for the ride in iOS. There are a few exceptions. I noticed that the lock screen feature which is I've mentioned at the beginning of this, is going to be on the phone, but it's not going to be on the iPad. So that's an interesting change. But iPad's getting the stage manager, which Ventura has, but the phone won't get it. So there are a few things that are not carrying over from all platforms. One thing I don't have a slide for, but I would like to mention is that in probably about a decade, the Mail app is getting some new features. It's getting it'll have the ability to hold the mail delivery until a certain preset time. So if you decide you want to write a response to someone and you don't want it arriving in the middle of the night when you're writing it, you can say schedule it to be delivered, 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then that's provided your phone is on, that's when it'll be sent. There are other similar things that features that are also more modern and follow up where you can say, hey, remind me of this if no one has responded in X days. And there are specific folders where you can look at these notes or these particular messages. So these are some very handy and long desired features for mail that third parties have offered for extra money for a long time, but they're quite useful, and I would recommend checking them out when they become available, when you get iOS 16. So anyway, that's all I have. It can do more, but if there's any questions about anything I've brought up here, let me know. All right. That's all I have for iOS. Thank you.